Want to bring on my friend Jerry O'Doherty, who is managing partner at a local CPA firm, or for the Omaha office, rather, of Eide Bailey. It's a national firm. And his colleague, Mark Rogers, who's calling in this morning from Chicago. And we're going to be talking about some energy tax credits that have an impact on anyone who's involved in building projects. But first of all, Jerry and Mark, good morning and welcome to the show.
Thank you, Jeff. Trenton, really do appreciate you guys allowing us to come here and speak.
And Mark, welcome from Chicago.
Yeah, good morning. Thanks for having me on.
Jerry, before we get any further, though, why don't you put in a plug for Eide Bailey, just so people know what it is and the fact that it was not too long ago called Syme Johnson.
Correct. Yeah, Jeff, thank you so much. So last July, a year ago July, our firm merged with Eide Bailey. So we're now a top 25 firm in the nation. We are in 15 different states, over 45 different offices. We're a full service firm. And as Syme Johnson, we were very blessed, been in the community for 40 plus years. But we saw what was taking place in our market, and we realized our clients need more. And part of that process, we started having numerous other services that we can now offer our clients. One of them is what we're going to be talking about today with Mark Rogers and his team, to talk about all these benefits that both the for-profit and not-for-profit entities can now participate in.
It seems like on a national level, we hear more and more, Jerry, about energy efficiency, and the government wants to do this, or there's a push for that. Is this all part of what we're hearing on the news?
That's exactly it, Trenton. So with the passage of the Inflation Reduction Act back at the end of 2022, it's really a misnomer. I know, shocker.
Wow.
That the government would name something, do one thing, and do something on the other end. But really what it has is some tremendous benefits for entities that never could participate before. It's always, I look at it, let's talk about the Huskers real quick, right? Next year they're moving the Big Ten. People are concerned, are they going to ever be able to participate in the big game, once they change things? Well, this case, it used to be not-for-profits never could participate in this game, and now they can. And it's a tremendous benefit that we'll talk some detail about for you and your listeners.
Okay, and so it comes out of the Inflation Reduction Act, and it basically provides energy tax credits for people who are in the building acquisition, construction, and renovation space. So let's talk a little bit about it. Jerry said both for-profit and non-profit entities, but what types of industries are benefiting the most from these energy incentives?
Yeah, Mark, I'll turn it over to you here.
Yeah, sure. So the Inflation Reduction Act, yes, it was a name that got passed so that the law can go through. It's one big energy bill. It's kind of industry agnostic. There's 24 incentives out there if you're building 4 walls and a roof. And if you're doing these things and putting in this energy property, the government is going to dole out anywhere north of $1.7 trillion of goodies. Now, I'll say this, so everyone's a winner in this space. Now, the winners plus in this space are those real estate developers that are doing one of 3 things. One, they're doing something with renewables. We're talking solar, wind, 8 others, and we can get into the weeds there. 2, decarbonization, electric vehicle charging stations, infrastructure for that, and cars. And then 3, energy efficiency. So think energy efficient HVAC or lighting or building envelope. So if you're playing in those 3 spots, there's going to be some incentives out there for you. You just have to ask. The IRS is not going to give you a heads up, hey, you forgot to take this incentive. It's incumbent on you to get to know these things, because these things are going to be around for the next 10 years, and then act on them and ask and develop this energy property.
Is this only for new ground-up construction, Mark, or is it major remodels as well?
Right. So in this Inflation Reduction Act, we'll just call it the energy bill. It's the largest energy bill in legislative history. They really widened the field goalpost. So for those who are building new, now's your chance to get in alternate bids for these renewables and energy efficient construction property. But also for those who are renovating or adding or expanding, they could play in the game too. Really what the government's trying to do, these incentives in the built environment have been around since the 70s, 80s, and 90s. What they're trying to do here is really push the energy focus. And they are tired of waiting for some of these renewables to be initiated due to paybacks. You know, you put in solar and then you get a payback up over 10 years because you have reduced utility bills. So what they're doing here is saying, the payback's great. We're going to give you a briefcase of cash to do this in year 1 or 2 to get that upfront cost and really start to get this into the marketplace.
So if you install these energy efficient devices, lighting, all that kind of stuff, you have to prove that the project's complete, and then you apply for it and the government writes you a check for half of it, or how does it work?
Right. So 2 ways you can monetize. And both ways start with this. You get into the energy incentive program. There is no shortage of, we talked about the Inflation Reduction Act, thousands of pages of legislation and guidance. And what happens in these cases, Congress will throw up a bunch of stuff that they want, and the IRS and Treasury tries to catch up and create the forms and create the rules and regulations to play in the game. So step 1 is to get into the energy incentive program. From that point, you start to design in renewables and energy efficiency. And from there, on the for-profit side, the tax credit. So if you have taxable income and you put in $100,000 of solar, potentially you can get a $50,000 credit. I've seen it go as high as $150,000. And yes, there's cases where you can get a higher credit than the amount of energy property you put in. Then that just goes onto your tax return and reduces your taxable income. It's a dollar for dollar credit. It's a wonderful thing. Where things are getting interesting is in the non-for-profit space. I've been doing this for 20 years, and never have non-for-profits been invited to even play the game because they don't pay tax, and so they don't need these incentives. That all changed with 2 words, direct pay. Direct pay is the mechanism where nonprofits or exempt organizations can now monetize this credit. So they go through the hoops, they file the forms, they register, they get into the program. At the end of the day, they apply for a credit, rabbit ears, and in turn, they get a direct pay check from the Department of Treasury. I call it a briefcase of cash. And that's how they get incentivized. They can think of that in the exempt org space, developing property there. Think of it like a rebate. And yeah, again, for 20 years, I've talked with only for-profit entities trying to reduce their taxable income in the built environment. Now, 90% of my conversations are with hospitals and religious organizations and education and even a presidential library. So things are starting to get really exciting for certain industries that, quite frankly, weren't invited to play in this game before.
Just a couple minutes left with Mark Rogers and Jerry O'Doherty from Eide Johnson talk about energy tax credits. And Mark, what about making sure your engineer or architect are up to date on this stuff? If you're doing a building project, there's no guarantee they know about that, right?
That is a really good point. I'd say since August of 22, when the Inflation Reduction Act came out, I've been on the road once or twice a month giving presentations, and the biggest challenge is getting everyone in the same room at the same time. You need your accounting, engineering, incentive consultant. You need you as a building owner, whether that's exempt or for profit, but you also need to get your designer involved, your facility engineer, your architect, to plan for these things. We have 10 years. Congress has given us a 10-year window, 2023 to 2032, to cash in on these. So this is the year where we start laying the foundation in our capital expenditure requests, our capital projects, and let it known that these one-time investment tax credits, briefcases of cash, are out there. I've been in many conversations where the architect says, solar doesn't make sense because the payback's 10 years and the upfront cost is another $1 million. Well, if we all get on the phone together and model out, we might find, hey, we might get you a $1.5 million credit for that solar, or geothermal, or electrochromic glass, fuel cells. There's 10 of them that every architect, engineer, and building owner should watch out for as buzzwords and start to consider these things, because where they might not have penciled out before, it might make financial sense to move forward with these renewables.
Well, folks, if you want to check into this, if you are contemplating or involved in a building project, reach out to Eide Bailey. It's spelled E-I-D-E, and Bailey is spelled not the way it sounds. It's B-A-I-L-L-Y, eidebailey.com. But Jerry O'Doherty and Mark Rogers, we appreciate you joining us and opening up our eyes to something that could be of benefit to a lot of Omaha listeners.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. And I'll give my phone number as well, Jerry O'Doherty. And my phone number is 402-691-5555.
That's his home number.
And like we said earlier, Jerry is the managing partner for Eide Bailey here in Omaha. Mark Rogers, thanks. Have a great weekend.
Yeah, thank you. Have a happy Thanksgiving, Jeff.
If you like this video, be sure to hit those like and subscribe buttons. And remember, Grow Omaha is not just media. This is a mission. We are trying to build up Omaha and make it an even better place. We can only do that with your help. Share this video with your friends, neighbors, and family.